This is Laugh or Death, hosted by keynote speaker Paul Ozenkup.
My wife and I lost almost everything we own in a wildfire, and we laughed. Not at the situation, because it sucked. It was really a hard time, but we did laugh our way through it at times. And this episode of Laugh or Death is all about our real story and the story of some of the other people in our neighborhood who were dealing with the devastation of wildfires, and how humor helped us at times get through it and build our resilience. Because we know that humor can lessen the impact of even traumatic events and lead to a greater sense of resilience and psychological well-being. And so I wanted to share a real story about how that happened for us and for a lot of people who dealt with the devastation of wildfires. So for Kelly and I, we moved from California. We moved to Montana, and we bought our dream house in the mountains of Montana. Just beautiful, awesome place. My sister and her husband were coming to visit, and we were excited to show someone our place. We had lived here about 5 months. We had just finished unpacking all the boxes and everything, and they got here. They had their 2 dogs with them. They got out of the car, and we're like, we can't wait to show you our house. And we literally poured a glass of wine, and we're giving the house tour. And as we're out on the deck, we see there a plume of smoke on the mountain behind us. And it's like, oh, doesn't look good. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. But they hadn't even been here long enough to get the whole house tour yet. And then that plume of smoke began to grow. And before we knew it, the whole hillside behind us, the entire mountain was on fire. And we're packing stuff up in a car and loading up their 2 dogs, our 2 dogs. And we knew we had to get out. And we went to a hotel nearby, the 4 of us and our 4 dogs, just trying to figure it out. When the last photo that was taken before we left, there were flames on the trees right behind our house. And so we figured our house was a total goner. But the next day, we got a text from our neighbors, Anne Marie. They had gotten back into the neighborhood after the fire had burned through. And she said, your house is still there. We're like, oh my gosh, great. And then later it was like, your house is on fire. Your house is actively on fire. There was a fire burning through our kitchen window. And apparently we had the bad luck of an ember had caught into a planter, and that was dry and didn't have anything in it, that was hanging on the windowsill and burned a hole through the kitchen window. And our neighbor was lucky enough to have seen that our house was on fire. It was smoldering through the kitchen window, made a huge hole in the wall, called the fire department. So they're putting the fire out. So we were relieved, but also bummed. But we got there and we saw that there was this huge hole burned in the back of our home. But luckily the fire department was able to put out the fire so it didn't destroy the entire home. That being said, it was smoldering so bad. It smoldered, I think, for a full day into the house, and all the windows and doors were locked. So the extent of smoke damage and soot damage was really severe. Our carpet was supposed to be like a light tan color carpet, but as we picked up our dog's toys off the carpet, you could see what color the carpet was supposed to be compared to what color it was now. Like now it was this deep charcoal gray, and you imagine that amount of smoke and soot in everything that we own. And so unfortunately, they found that it was a total loss. Like they couldn't replace things, all the electronics, everything in the house we had to get rid of, and were ruined and non-salvageable. And so that was really hard. There's a thing that I practice that I talk about in my book called humorous reappraisal. And it's about when you couldn't think of something funny to say or do in the moment, but then later you think of it. And I actually got to use my humorous reappraisal because I remember when we were going through, and that carpet that was so badly stained with smoke and soot, the first time the insurance estimator came, he looked at it and goes, oh, well, yeah, it looks like we could probably just clean the carpet, don't even need to replace it, and it should be fine. And I remember my blood boiling. I'm like, oh my gosh, they are going to go cheap and not like replace this carpet, because even if you got the stain out of all the smoke and soot, you're not getting the smell and the chemicals. I mean, you could smell the chemicals that were burning all in the wall and the interior of the house. Like, you're not going to get all those carcinogens out of the carpet, you know? And so I remember being so upset, but I got a chance to kind of play the what I could have said game and try it again, because another estimator came a few days later and was checking the notes, and he goes, and it looks like we were thinking we might just clean the carpets and not replace them. And I go, yeah, or if you want, I could train my dogs to put their toys back in those exact spots, and then we don't have to do anything. And, it made them laugh a little bit, maybe softened them up a little, because ultimately what they decided to do was replace. I mean, everything, the whole inside of the house had to be stripped down and redone, and we lost pretty much everything we owned. But another moment of humor was like the day when we got into the house to see the extent of the damage. We're looking at the kitchen window where the fire had burned through. And like a good husband, I had cleaned the kitchen the night before, and I even wiped down the windowsill. And then my wife has these Swedish Dala horses. They're just like these horse figurine things that were in the windowsill, and they were still there as the firefighters were putting the fire out in the other window. And so we got to see the view that the firefighters saw of our kitchen and our home as they were putting the fire out. My wife looks over at the windowsill and goes, "Oh my God, Paul, did you put the horses back in the windowsill like that again last night?" And I look over, and yes, the horses were humping. I had one horse on top of another mounted from behind. And I was like, yes, I'm a child. What an idiot. And so that was the view the firefighters and our neighbor got as they're looking into the house that's on fire. Like, oh, love what you've done with the place. Very happy. In my defense, we live right across from like a stallion, like a boarding facility. So maybe I'm just easily influenced. I don't know. But that gave us a good laugh, even in the trauma that we were going through, and kind of gave this psychological distance from what we were actually dealing with for a brief second. You know, sadly, this wasn't the first time that we had dealt with something like this, because we had moved from California, from a town called Santa Rosa. And in Santa Rosa, I'll never forget, I was staining the deck. I was restaining our deck. And if you've ever done that, it's kind of a pain in the ass job. And I was just about done, and the wind started to pick up. It was whipping and whipping, and we had all these pine trees, and there's pine needles just flying through the air and landing on our deck that I just stained with all this sticky stain. So I've got all these pine needles. And I remember getting really upset because I couldn't stop it from happening. I'm trying to sweep them off, but it's just a mess now. And I remember saying these words to my wife. I was like, oh, great. Now it's like ruined this whole stage job. This is worst case scenario. I'm just a drama queen, okay? But I was like, oh, this is worst case scenario. Well, I was wrong, because those winds picked up so much. They were like 90 to 100 mile an hour winds. And sadly, a wildfire started in Santa Rosa where we lived. And that wildfire was so devastating. There were thousands of homes burned and businesses, thousands of people in evacuation shelters. During that storm, we were evacuated for, I think, a week or maybe a little longer. And luckily for us, there was just very minor damage around our property, unlike this one in Montana. It was a really scary time because like much of the town was demolished, completely demolished. And it felt like really helpless going through that time. And I remember even the next day after that fire, going to a store in a nearby town, and we were looking for breathing masks because the smoke was so heavy in the air. And at this store, one of the people that worked there was like, "I'm sorry, everyone. There's no more masks. You know, we're all out of masks." And I was walking out of the store behind this family, and we walked past like the Halloween section, and this kid points and goes, "Dad, there's masks. There's masks over there." And me and his dad kind of look at each other and have a little laugh. Like, even in the midst of this horribly traumatic moment, Like, kids are still funny and say funny things. And it gave us this like brief moment of levity. And then as we're going through that, just this horrific incident with so many people in our town in evacuation shelters, there was a Facebook group that had formed. And it was a group where people were giving a lot of updates and resources and that kind of stuff. And basically the entire city was in this Facebook group. But somebody had posed the question on this Facebook group, what's the most random thing you grabbed when you evacuated? It was kind of cool to see, our friends and neighbors and community members just take a brief break from their trauma to have a little fun with this question. Because if you've ever had to evacuate, like, it's weird. You don't know what to do or what to grab. And so they, taking a brief break from what was going on to answer this question and have a little fun, because we know that, like, our brains can't really actively process humor and psychological distress at the same time. So any brief break of laughing or levity that you're giving your brain is just a momentary break from the trauma that you're experiencing. So here's a few of my favorite things from the, what's the most random thing you grabbed when you evacuated question. Somebody wrote, my husband grabbed the Roomba and our robot mop. I just like the fact that the robot, like, mops and Roombas are like members of the family now. Like, don't forget our little cyborgs. All right. A frozen lasagna. I don't know. My wife said, grab some food. Can you imagine this guy with like a Costco-sized lasagna walking in like, what are we supposed to do with this? Just wait for it to thaw. Someone wrote, I brought lavender-scented soap and body oil and kept yelling, self-care, self-care, as we were packing things up, trying to evacuate. And in hindsight, I was really happy to have it when we were evacuated. That's funny. Someone wrote, my old gizmo from 1984. I love Gremlins, and said, okay, we can leave now. That's kind of cute. Another one, a tub of Chick-fil-A sauce. See, to me, that's the beauty of, like, you're grabbing, like, okay, we've got a thing with our passports in it. Grab the computer. I got the cat. Oh, hey, grab that Chick-fil-A sauce. I'm not going anywhere without that. Just the essentials. My new shampoo, I just bought it and it was really expensive. Okay. That one, I'll be honest. I don't really relate. I don't really relate to that one. But hey, you people with hair, I see you. Okay. Your feelings are valid here. I just love that person was justifying, like, hey, this was expensive shampoo. I'm not leaving without that. Another person wrote, my kid's homework. And at first it's like, oh, that's nice. But that poor child is already being traumatized. Like, that poor kid is like, I finally have the world's best excuse to not do my homework. Like, my school might be on fire. My house might be on fire. I'm in an evacuation shelter, but at least I still get to do algebra. Yay. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Oh, man. And finally, lingerie, like, why would I need that? Oh, and Disney movies. Okay, well, we have an award for the most awkward person at the evacuation shelter, right? That is an overshare, ma'am. It's like these kids at the shelter, like, see, like, oh my gosh, Disney movies on. Okay, start walking over there. The parents are like, no. There's something wrong with that lady. We're not going over there. Oh man. So I was having fun, like, reading those and thinking about the fact that, like, we're all going through this thing and people are taking a break to just have a little fun with the randomness of having to evacuate. But this went on for months, weeks and months, because then we started getting to the point of time, it's like 8 weeks later and we're starting to get into the holidays, and it was still just devastation all over the city with thousands of homes burned and people out of their homes. And this is a time of year we felt like, man, we should be putting on ugly sweaters and going to holiday parties and taking pictures in front of the fireplace for our holiday cards and stuff. And there was this one family, the Havstead family, who lost their home. And they said, you know what? We're going to do it anyway. And they hired a photographer. They went back to their house dressed in ugly sweaters, and they hung stockings on the only thing that was left standing in the house, which was the fireplace. And the rest is just rubble and ash and soot. And so they've got these great pictures of And if you're watching on the YouTube feed, you can see them. But these great pictures of them standing with their ugly sweaters and their stockings in front of their fireplace of their burned out home, and really moving. And I spoke with the photographer that did this photo shoot for them, and he said it was like a magical moment because, you know, they got back to as they were setting up to take these pictures, and just being back at their home that had burned, there were a lot of tears shed again as they were looking at their home. But then as they were setting up for these goofy pictures, also a lot of laughter. And he said, you know, every time they laughed, it was almost like this signal to each other that, like, you know what, this sucks, but we're going to be okay. And we're going to get through it. Shared laughter is almost like a battle cry. Like, hey, we're going to be all right. We're going to do this. You know, I do a lot of talks about humor and resilience, and I got the opportunity about a year later to do a talk in the community around this. And we actually had an article written in the Sonoma County Press Democrat newspaper, where a year later we interviewed people asking about, were there any moments of levity or humor that helped get you through this traumatic event? And there were a lot of stories. I won't share all of them. There are a few fun ones that I like, but one person said their house completely destroyed. Their entire neighborhood was completely destroyed, just leveled. They said they got back and the mailboxes were still there. And so they looked in their mailbox and there was a coupon for a discounted cremation. And they were like, oh, I mean, why would I pay? It looks like nature's trying to do it for me, you know? Like the fact that they had a discounted cremation coupon in their mailbox when they got back after that is insane, man. There was also a neighborhood that, again, the whole neighborhood was gone. And they used to have, there was a no trespassing sign on a path going through that, up into that neighborhood. And it said posted, no trespassing. And one guy's barbecue grill had ended up down at the bottom of that path, and it was all burnt up. But he took the rack from his barbecue grill, he reposted that no trespassing sign, but he made the P in posted into an R. And so there's this sign going into this burnt neighborhood, and it says roasted, no trespassing, which I thought, like, I mean, that was him just taking it upon himself to be like, man, I got to have a little fun here, and finding his own resilience and levity in that moment. Another one that this might be my favorite is one of the things that I guess, you know, survived a fire, which makes sense in this one house that was totally burned, was like a freezer in the garage that they had, like a big old freezer. And, you know, it was charred up and burned, but it survived. It had fallen over, and they saw inside the freezer, they had a frozen turkey. That thing was fully cooked. There was a fully cooked turkey from that fire. They could have eaten it. There is a picture that I've got here on YouTube's. If you don't believe me, there is a picture of this fully cooked turkey from this fire. Incredible. And what I love about that also is that the folks who shared that story said that it gave them a laugh for sure, but it also was like a good reminder of, man, we still have so much to be thankful for. You know, even going through all this, you know, we were all okay. We're going to be fine. And there's just a lot still to be thankful for. And I remember when I was giving a talk to a group it was at a healthcare symposium in Sonoma County a year after this fire about resilience and about humor. And I had people come up to me afterward and share some of their stories of resilience. There was one woman who said that she had a friend helping her, because after the fires, we would go through and sift through people's homes with these sifters, trying to find if you could find any like jewelry or anything. And she had a friend helping her do that, sifting through the ashes. And her friend said, I've got something over here. And so she looked at like what part of the house that would be in and ran over. And it was this piece of wire. It was this piece of wire, it's kind of curved. And she looks at it and just starts bust out laughing. And her friend's like, what? And she's like, could see that she was in her bedroom, and she was like, this is the underwire to one of my bras. And they both just started laughing, like, of all the things that we saved in the fire, the underwire to one of my bras, and it gives me a new appreciation for you women. What are they making those things out of? Jeez, man, everything burns except that makes it. I mean, my God. But, we all cope differently with things. Some people might feel like, if I feel bad laughing during such a tough, stressful, traumatic time. But humor is a coping strategy, just like many other coping strategies. Humor can help us cope through really devastating things. So if humor gets you through a day, or even through this moment right now, or anything that you're going through, even for a little bit, I say laugh it up. Because you don't have to feel bad about laughing through something that you didn't ask for and that wasn't your fault. This just happened to all of us, and we had to go through it. My wife and I were fine. The bones of our house, we were very lucky. The bones of our house were saved. We had to replace pretty much everything we own. We lived in a tiny house with no heat for like 8 months with just a wood-burning stove through the winter in Montana, which is its own whole other story, while our home was repaired. But you know what? Being able to find a little levity here and there through these horrific moments, it does build resilience. And now, I told the story about the humping horses in a windowsill. Well, since then, we had friends give us a little statue, the bronze statue of these two bears humping that is now in the windowsill. We also now have rabbit salt and pepper shakers that match together like they're humping. So, we're real classy people over here now. Our house is real classy. But you know what? We're fun. We're funny. But when I look at those things, like that bear statue that's in the windowsill, I mean, it's a sign to me of just like resilience and also levity, and just like, who cares if I have humping bears in my house? It's my house. If you come visit, you could think I'm a weirdo. We survived a fire, dang it. Anyway, I hope that these stories resonate with you somehow, and regardless of what you're going through in life, even if you can't laugh at it, I hope you can find a way to laugh through it. So thanks for listening, and make sure wherever you're listening, please subscribe to the podcast. It helps us so much. And if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, subscribe to that as well. Talk soon.
You've been listening to Laugh or Death with Paul Ozenkup. If you're planning a conference or event and want something smart, meaningful, and actually funny, book Paul to speak. To learn more or to get a copy of his book, The Humor Habit, visit laughordeath.com.